Before we jump into this, I just want to take a moment, in case it wasn't obvious, that we are going to be deep diving into the movie The Little Mermaid, which means there is a big old spoiler warning right here. Spoiler warning. If you haven't seen it and you don't want anything spoiled, then pause this and come back after you've seen it, and then you can enjoy our rants and discussions. But if you're fine with some spoilers, let's get into it. I don't really know how to intro a podcast, but we can try. Welcome to this. This is a podcast with me, Taylor, and my very good bestest friend, Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan.
Yeah, Dan and Taylor. And if you've seen my channel before, you've probably met Dan. He's great. He's been featured on here a few times back when I lived in LA. He was my roommate. Miss him.
Yep. Good old days.
Yeah, it was a good time. But one of the things that we loved to do back then was to just talk and rant and discuss and deep dive into movies. And we both missed it so much that we thought, hey, we should just do it in a podcast. And here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we haven't thought of a name.
Nope. No name yet. If you see the name, then it'll be a surprise to both of us.
Yeah. And if you come up with a name, leave it in the comments so that we can not have to think of one. That would be great.
That's right.
Yeah. A little bit of background so that you at least understand that we know a little bit about we know a little bit of what we're talking about when it comes to film. I worked in the film industry for about 10 years. I was a film editor on a lot of different things and movies and TV shows and stuff. Some good, some bad. So I got the whole experience of the film industry. And Dan.
Nice. I am a visual effects artist. I'll be up on 20 years. Oh my God, I feel so old. Well, I'm coming up on 20 years. I may be like a year or two away, but it gets hazy after 15 years. But I've worked on everything big and small, from the worst reality TV shows to, big budget Marvel movies, doing CG, and I'm a CG generalist. And yeah, that's been my whole world. So I know a lot about how movies are made and a lot of stuff that, like, I try to not let it affect my opinion of movies, because a lot of it is like, well, I saw that and I saw what they did and I know the process, and it sort of distracts me in the middle of a scene. So I try not to let that happen as often as possible.
Yeah. And one of the things that we bonded over, our mutual dislike of, were videos on the internet that like to just rip apart movies for the dumbest things that don't really impact the movie as a whole, especially just like visual effects in a way that's just really unfair and just
quote unquote bad visual effects.
Yeah.
Like, I tend to understand how they happen. So it's less about being like, this is bad. We're not aiming to be cinema sins.
No, that's exactly what we want to do with this podcast, is look at movies from people who understand them, who really love them, who want to both enjoy them and point out the things that are bad. Like, unlike a lot of stuff on the internet, which just wants to be rude for some reason, we want to talk about both. And we don't want to just nitpick on things that are unrealistic for some movies to even accomplish, because we know how it actually feels to work on movies, and how, even though you want them to be perfect, sometimes that's just not realistically possible.
Yeah. Especially with a movie like this one.
Little Mermaid. This is such a good example of that.
This is the 2023 just released live action Little Mermaid that the world has been begging for 30 something years. Who knows? Wasn't it
96 or something? Or no, wasn't it like 89?
No, it was 89. 1989 is The Little Mermaid.
Dan was alive. I wasn't.
I was alive. I did not see that one in theaters, unfortunately. That was a little early for, I was just starting my theater going phase because I was still a child and being annoying.
You were too busy going to horror movies.
Well, I did see a lot of horror movies. I saw Hellraiser before I saw Little Mermaid.
Of course you did. And that will set the tone perfectly for you as a human being that they are going to experience throughout this podcast.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially when it comes to my opinions, because
you have the best opinions. You're my favorite person to talk movies with. I'm so excited for this. So we both saw The Little Mermaid, the live action 2023 remake of The Little Mermaid. We saw it yesterday independently. We have not talked about it. Neither of us have disgusted at all. And I'm really excited for it. So
yeah.
should we just, how do we start this?
I'm going to say go with first impressions. You start.
I'm going to give like an overall feel. I didn't hate this movie as much as I thought I would. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I would say it's a good movie, but I'm interested to hear your opinion because I think we have different opinions on movies. I think it's got a lot of weak parts, especially in your area of expertise. And I think it did a lot of stuff right with the story. And that's what I was most like impressed by and happy about. I really was expecting them to completely bomb on that aspect. So they did well on that, and we'll talk about that more. But overall, I liked it more than the original, but I wasn't a huge fan of the original. I have my reasons. We're going to talk about it.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
I liked it more than the original. I didn't think the original was as good as everyone thinks it is. So I also don't like cartoons. If you know anything about me, I know.
Yeah, no cartoons, no horror movies.
Not everyone can be perfect. Okay. I have to have things, and that's one of them. I don't like cartoons. It's just, it makes my brain shut off. So I liked this one more. And I'm excited to tell you why. So what about you, Dan?
Well, it's hard to be not. It's hard because you tend to be of two minds about these things. When you grow up with the original, you have a certain attachment to it and the way it did things, the way characters were perceived and things and the actions and the way the songs looked and felt. And when a different interpretation gets thrown into it, you tend to have negative reactions right off the bat. I will say that while I didn't like it as much as the original, there is a lot of value in this movie. I saw it with a packed crowd that was absolutely eating it up. And it was decent. It was pretty good, actually. And I feel that if this is your first foray into the world of Little Mermaid, then you're probably going to think it's like pretty rad, actually. A lot of the big set pieces work really well. A lot of the numbers still work really well. Halle Bailey did a great job.
So good.
Melissa McCarthy did a great job.
So good.
A lot of that was really, really good. And a lot of the stuff that gives you an initial negative reaction does win you over the course of the movie. Again, I don't think the movie's perfect. I think it has a lot of missteps along the way. And I think a lot of that stems from like fear from the top down and the Disney brass sort of making decisions as they go to like make the movie more palatable for a wide audience. Because, unlike making an animated Disney movie where I guess nobody's really clear on what the budget of that original Disney movie was, because it was animated. It's hard to quantify that. But when you look at this, you're like 200 mil easy, like this movie's going to, I mean, if you think that that's all right, it's like, and then you're talking 200 mil for a marketing campaign. So it's going to have to make, and that's so you're looking at $500 million box office grossing movie that has to make that money for it to turn a profit in any sort of meaningful way. So that sort of tends to go a long way to explain a lot of the weirder decisions that I may not have liked, because I like, weirder, more personalized cinema. And I can get into the details of where it sort of lost me with a few of those decisions, but it's not a bad movie. Your kids are probably going to love it. You're probably going to be super entertained by it. And if it's on TV, you're probably later on, as the years roll by, you're probably not going to be disappointed that it's popping up in your stream. Yeah. So, it's
during the movie, like if I was a kid, I think I would be really into this. I'd be enjoying it. And
I saw kids eating it up. Just
I think people forget that, especially like our generation, where when something was made for us and then 20, 30 years later, it gets remade. It is hard to tell because sometimes it feels like we are the audience and sometimes it feels like we're not. And this was kind of in between. It felt like it was trying to be more adult, like right from the beginning. Like it starts pretty dramatic. And like even the Little Mermaid text that comes up, I'm like, this feels like a weird period drama piece title.
It was trying to be. I didn't hate it either. I was always like one step forward, two steps back a lot of the times with the movie, because while the movie did start off really strong, like it immediately starts hitting you over the head with exposition dialogue, explaining the world, explaining where these characters are, explaining what they're doing, and it felt, I mean, it was like when the prince is on the boat right in the beginning and his little, I don't know, one of the Fisher guys, the old guy, is like sort of following him around and like sort of explaining like, the gods are angry and the blah, 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 and the fish people, and there's mermaids and they'll eat you, and it's like, and you're just like, oh, okay. Like I didn't like none of that was in the original animated movie.
No.
And I could have lived without it because I get it. We're in the world. This is Pirates of the Caribbean world.
It is funny though, you say that, but one of the things I did like overall was that they at least added some of that. I think they did it too much. Like we get it. We get that this doesn't like, they added a whole bunch of like the queen, obviously we'll talk about her, but
and the social political landscape of like what the world is and the coral moon and like all these things.
Like I don't know, I kind of liked a lot of that stuff. They didn't add as much about the coral moon stuff as like they did about the fact that the two worlds hate each other, and they kept hitting you over the head with that. But again, it's kind of a kids movie, and maybe they're just trying to like really, it could have been worse, but I did at least like that they did it.
You could tell that they wanted to expand the world in a lot of meaningful ways. But what I really felt like they did in the end was they took an 80-minute movie and they made it 2 hours and 10 minutes without really adding a lot. And the stuff that they did add, the stuff that they did add, which was like a lot of musical numbers, there's like 3 or 4 new musical set pieces. I didn't really dig any of them. Like
the one I really liked was the Scuttlebutt.
Scuttlebutt was the one that won me. I will say Scuttlebutt was, I was like, oh, they're getting some rap in here.
Yeah,
you want to know what was missing from a lot of that is what I feel the live action is missing from a lot of its adaptations is like a lot of the musical numbers in the old animated movies had like this whole show that they were putting on. It was like a pageantry. And in a song, especially like Scuttlebutt, it's just a bird flying around a room. Nothing's really happening. And they're just talking the song. They're just speaking the song to you. This is a plot point that happened.
Aquafina is so likable. Otherwise it would have fallen real short.
Yeah. And Scuttlebutt, because I've heard a lot of chatter online about like, I don't know if this is the best or worst song.
It's also a minute and 10 seconds, so it's not very long.
It's super short. And I felt like about a lot of the songs, I was like, these songs are super short and there's not a lot. The Prince's song got me. Did not get me. I did not like it. I did not like the Prince's song at all because I was like, there's no hook, there's no chorus, there's nothing interesting going on in this song. There's no big spectacle showcase that they're like presenting. He's just walking down a path and telling you how he feels. And I'm like, this is like a musical out of the 70s. Like
the thing about that song is I had not seen the original until this morning I watched it. So I hadn't seen the original for a long time. Sorry, I watched it when I was like a kid, but that was a while ago. So I haven't seen it in 20 or something years. I couldn't remember which songs were new other than I absolutely knew there wasn't a rap in the original one. And it sounded a lot like Hamilton. So I knew that it was probably Lin-Manuel Miranda's doing.
Yeah, he's in the Disney machine now. So I figure every song.
I'm happy with it. I'll take it. I'm good. But the scene with Eric, I was thinking like this, it didn't feel quite like the original. And I figured it was one of the newer songs. I don't know anything about music and like hooks and stuff. But one thing from the editing perspective, the first half especially just felt super off because it felt like they were rushing with pieces, like just to get you to where they were like, here's what I'm feeling. And I'm like, I don't know, give me a close up of him thinking before he breaks into song. Like I have no idea where he is emotionally, except that he's screaming at the ocean now.
That's right. And, and I felt like the movie as a whole suffered from that problem where like the
middle, in my opinion,
thoughtful moments that like the characters should have had introspection get really glossed over, or one moment that one section of the movie that got me the most when it comes to that is when they felt the need to give Ariel like an internal dialogue of like what she's seeing and what she's experiencing.
That was one of the new songs, right?
That was another new song. And I'm sitting here going like, why couldn't you just let the editing, sound design, and character, because Halle Bailey kills it in this movie. She does an excellent job being Ariel.
All the acting overall is pretty solid.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm gonna say the Prince lost me a little bit.
I don't think it was him. I think it was his editing.
It was a lot. It was something about him didn't work because I didn't feel like there was any like charm to him. Like, and here's another perfect example.
He's
like
not Prince Charming. He's Prince Eric.
Oh,
Damn.
they're all Prince Charming. but you know, it's like, especially like when she's riding the horse in the carriage and like Ariel, he like gives her the reins and she of course like goes fast. And you know, like I felt like there could have been a lot of comedic timing with him like looking over the edge and getting a funny like, you know, like just a lot of like
editing.
Yeah, it is editing. It is a lot
and
of
coverage,
like,
but
and
I
coverage
feel
and like getting those reactions and having him exaggerate his facial expressions to be like, oh my God, she's putting me in danger, but she's also kind of awesome. And I love this. Is sort of like I mean, again, we're getting in the weeds of like acting and like facial expressions and stuff like that, which isn't a reflection of a movie as a whole, but it's all drops in a bucket on like where the movie starts to lose me. Now, as a kid's film, like I said before, this is not a problem.
We're definitely pushing
this is an elevated conversation beyond what a kid's film you should expect from a kid's film, truthfully.
With Eric, the moments, I think there are moments where he acts really well. I think the whole, from the carriage scene up until, I mean, pretty much for me, the movie really shines in that like second act where they're on land. It was like, you can tell that the director is really uncomfortable with the underwater scenes. He had no idea what he was doing. I know. I'm curious to hear how much you think of that as visual effects. I assume that that's part of it because they don't have as much freedom with editing and stuff. They really shied away from some like just breath, letting it kind of breathe in the ways, and then they were too long in other ways. But the second half is just once about an hour in, I looked at my watch. I was like, okay, this feels like a better movie.
Once they're making a normal film.
Yeah. Then the director's like, I can do this.
Yeah. And not this big CG putting faces on CG bodies and blah, blah, blah. And like all this stuff. And not only that, but like the world will never know, but the way that the real facial hair on King Trident like blended into the CG hair that then turned into like floating hair. And you're just like, holy crap. I can't even imagine the nightmares, the sleepless nights, the hundreds of artists like just dying on the sword to make that happen.
I've seen you work enough. We worked together briefly and you were my roommate and I got to see you that type of just slaving away over visual effects.
Yeah.
The whole time I kept thinking there are so many ways in which I think this looks terrible. And then so many ways in which I'm like really impressed that they even managed to do this.
I feel like the whole movie was like a tech demo for like underwater hair.
Yeah, the hair. I kept thinking that was really good.
Her hair, which is like braids mixed in with individual strands. And if you're looking really close, you can see those individual strands and they hold up and they float and they interact and move. Yeah. And you're just like, oh my God, my man, like, why did you do this to yourselves?
Well, she actually, it's her, like a lot of her hair is hers, right? And she was really happy that she wasn't able or didn't have to cut it because she hasn't cut her hair since she was like 4. That was
I didn't know a whole lot about that. I mean, I haven't really looked into like the making of this movie a whole lot. Yeah.
I also heard that she was wearing a wig, so I don't really know how that works. Maybe they just said she didn't have to cut her hair. I'm not sure.
You know, honestly, it's probably a mixture. It usually is. Like her hair is probably not that long or not that braided or like it's really intense to put your hair in that style every day for months and months and months that it takes for filming. So you never know. And of course, like sometimes movies end, she picks up another role, has to change her hair, but then has to come back to this movie for reshoots. And then that's where like wigs come into play. And you see that happen in a lot of movies.
I remember I read the famous scene or the famous shot where she like flips her hair back out of the ocean. Mm-hmm. She said that she felt like she got whiplash from it because the wig was so heavy.
Yeah, I bet, you know, I mean, a lot of that is just like, oh, they had real water in this movie somewhere. Awesome. I'll take it.
So you overall thought the visual effects were good?
I do. Well, it's really hard to be negative about a movie with visual effects like this. Whereas 10, 15, even 20 shots of the movie could be bad, questionable, weirdly composited, any number of reasons. But you're looking at it as a film goer on a shot by shot basis. But when you look at it in the whole of the movie, you're talking like 2,000 CG shots and 10 of them were bad. You know, so it's really, really hard to judge the whole movie's visual effects representation for all the studios and all the artists and go, well, this shot was bad, so the whole movie's bad. And it's like, were there questionable shots? Yes. Yeah, totally. Lots of them. I mean, there's a lot of shots where it's clearly a real person's head that they filmed on top of a CG body, and it just doesn't move right. It's like clearly puppeted in there. And the thing that gets me the most, again, no one's going to care about this but me, is lighting. I feel like a lot of the underwater lighting was very directionless and soft. Right. For the specific purpose of being like, well, we want to have the ability to change the landscape underwater because all of this is still in flux. And if we put these hotspots and these lights all over the place, they have to be represented on the actor, but we can't really do that. So we either replace the actor entirely with CG and then add those lights, or we try to put those lights in and then fake the lighting on the CG on the real actor's face because we didn't light it that way when we shot it. So a lot of that just comes from the world of production, but a lot of it was really noticeable, especially when you get into like Ursula's underground layer, where there's like lots of neon and interesting things all over the place. And a lot of it just...
I felt like in general, the underwater scenes, except Ursula, I actually liked hers more, but a lot of the underwater scenes felt really like dark and bland.
That's right. Yeah.
On one hand, I was like, well, that is the ocean. It's dark and terrifying. But on the other hand, I think it was because of visual effects limitation.
They have to do it that way. They have to light neutrally and then sort of like work it back in retroactively as like the shots evolve and stuff like that. So, I mean, again, this is getting way in the weeds of like my profession, so I don't want it to bog down like the review of the movie.
It was noticeable to somebody like me. Like
it is noticeable
negatively to the underwater scenes. I was so happy when they got out of it because it felt something about it felt very heavy and not right. And I couldn't put my finger on it.
Yeah, especially you got to think too, it's like it's an underwater setting. So you're weightless underwater. So you're spinning and moving and upside down and all these things. And it's hard to get a consistent light. It's like you can't put them in a dome and in 0G and just have them do flips. It's like the lights are weighted to the real world and the actor is too. So no matter what, it's got to like be that way. But then you'll have a shot underwater where it's like really dark behind them. And then of course, like a really harsh key light's hitting her from the side. And then there's none of that light is represented in the world. And it sort of like makes the CG look disconnected from her in the background. And then
are you talking about Ursula?
I mean, not just Ursula, but I'm Ariel a whole lot.
Yeah.
I also feel, and this is just a guess, but they couldn't figure out what to do with her top because I felt like her top stood out from her whole. Like, part of me was like, they should have figured out something to do with the seashells. I don't know why they didn't.
Well, I actually read about this, and the costume designer said that they felt it was just ridiculous for the mermaid.
It probably was.
I actually didn't. I liked the like art that they did on this merman and the mer people,
sort of like latex outfits.
I liked that it was almost like scaly and like actually just felt like it was a little more like them. I never liked the seashell thing. I think it's ridiculous for like a 16-year-old. It's just like, all right, I like that she wasn't like overly
sexualized.
It was really nice because she's a 16-year-old and also 11, which is very dangerous ground.
But it's easier when they don't say any names and then you cast an actress in her 20s and then we're just not going to talk about it. Because if you're going back to the source material, it's like, well, the Disney movie was nothing like the book. And this movie is more is an interpretation of the Little Mermaid.
Right. Which is why it's always hilarious when people complain about like, well, they changed it.
They changed her. Or the crazies come out and then
they
were just
so
like
mad about what's her Hallie or Haley? Hallie.
It's I thought it's Haley.
Haley Bailey. It's a
Hallie Bailey.
I don't know.
Oh man, that's gonna upset me. We got to get her name right. Let me look it up real quick.
I have no idea. It's not Halle Berry. That I know.
No. It's not Halle Berry. It's I got it right here. Hold on. Halle Bailey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Halle Bailey. People were. We'll touch on it for a second, but people were really upset about the casting choice.
Of course, it's a cast an African American actress as Ariel, which
traditionally white role.
In the traditionally white role with red hair, and they kept the red hair and they did all this stuff. But honestly,
which I thought was great. I thought it worked great.
I did. I thought it worked great. It was completely fine. It's not going to bother anyone that isn't a racist.
And she killed it. Like she was so,
and she did a great job.
Good. Yeah. She was the like star of this movie. She sang beautifully. She brought a lot of unique stuff that like was like, I know that's not how the original sounded, and it sounds great.
Yeah, no, her her falsetto, I want to say that's what it's called. Like, I don't know. The way she sings is like, she nails it. Like she's incredibly talented. I was looking into her and where she came from, because I haven't seen a lot of work that she's been in, but she was well in the Disney machine, you know, like being brought up in that world of like singing and, you know, being a performer. And she does an incredible job. And I think she's going to have a huge career. I mean, she's got The Color Purple coming up pretty soon, which is another remake. But I feel that she's just going to have a long, incredible career. And this is going to really like kickstart her into the stratosphere.
So anyone who's complaining about her, like if you see the movie still complaining about her casting choice, you're wrong, because she nailed it.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said about this world of like Disney remakes and interpretations and stuff like that, where they're sort of like race swapping the characters, and like, who cares? Like it's not that big of an issue, only if you have an issue with that specifically. And it says more about you than it does about the movie, truthfully. Go
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to
take over the whole podcast. You and I have talked about this with other movies in the past. And one of the things that we always come back to is how that's one of the things we love about movies and film and TV is that it is kind of, it's beautiful and great that different people get to give their interpretations of something. Like we're both Superman, and we're like, make different versions of Superman. That's the whole. Yeah.
Especially now in the world of multiverses, you can blow the door wide open and have any number of Supermen that you want. Now, I do feel that there is a little bit of social responsibility to the lore, because I think you can make some decisions to race swap characters in certain instances that may do a disservice to other characters. Making Peter Parker, African-American takes away from Miles Morales. Because it's that character originated that way, came up that way. You're never going to change Miles Morales from who he is. And
Miles Morales was written as a way to explore that, and also it's such a key part of his experience, and it acknowledges
that's race. Right. But when it's a racially agnostic character in a fantasy world, and it doesn't like have to do a lot with their like backstory and stuff like that, like. It's like you can do whatever you want, like have your interpretations, because it is like I tend to have a rule for myself, like if you're going to make an adaptation, probably like do it like as close to the source as possible. But like this is one of those realms where like the source material of The Little Mermaid is like so far removed from the world that we.
And if you're also going to base something off of something that was made like however many years ago, back when like only white people existed in terms of freedom, it's a little bit hard to be like, you know, it's always like, going to be this.
I mean, you're talking about a story written in 1837.
Yeah, so it wasn't historically a great time for representation anyway. Yeah.
So. And if you're going to complain, if you're going to complain about her not being accurate, well, the ending of the movie isn't accurate, where Ariel dies and turns into sea foam, and has to spend 300 years trying to get into heaven by doing good deeds as a spirit. All right, like nobody wanted that movie.
Disney was like, sounds a little dark.
Yeah, that seems a little dark, having our heroine like lose and die in the end, and the prince, like none of that happens. And she just like throws herself on the sword out in the ocean.
Well, and back to this movie, other things that they did that I like, they added the queen, which I loved. First of all, that actress is amazing. Like she just it's crazy how you can see the difference between, I don't know, like just really typically older actors that have been around and like been in things. And you're just like, wow, she just is very, from the second she was on, it was like, she's very good at this. She knows exactly what she's doing. And it was, especially against Eric, like he is younger. He doesn't have as much of it. And you're like, wow, she really just elevated the whole human world.
It makes the world more real when and while I didn't, again, you're talking like they didn't need it in the animated movie, but they put it in the movie and then padded out the runtime. But part of me was like, I didn't mind so much that they got into the geopolitical world of like our ships keep sinking and that's affecting our trade and blah blah blah, and like he's insecure about it, and like and I'm glad that that even though they did introduce it where I was like, I could have probably lived without it, that they didn't dive so deep into like our kingdom is collapsing and these fish people, and like we're going to war, and then it ends with a Disney war sequence where two sides are like coming down a hill and like
release the Kraken.
It's like the Kraken comes out and it turns into the to the battle scene from Aquaman where like and then Ariel has to stop it.
I'm surprised you felt like it was padded. I felt like, other than a couple of the songs, like the only song really I felt I really didn't like and it wasn't that I didn't like it. I just didn't think it was needed, was her internal dialogue gravity one.
Yeah, that one hurt me.
Like, it just like, it was fine. I thought it was an interesting choice to be like, okay, we're going to give her an internal voice. Like she never can fully lose her voice from like a metaphoric standpoint. That's pretty interesting. I don't think I can see that feeling like in pre-production that would have worked really well. And then just kind of being one of those things that you, when it happens, you're like, oh, it didn't quite turn out how we wanted. But and Eric's, I actually thought was fine. It felt shoehorned in and it felt way too soon. And he was like really dramatic. And I was like, okay, well, how did we go from like a scene with my mom and I'm not agreeing with her to like, now I'm by the ocean and I'm trapped.
I feel like if they were going to give Eric a song, they should have given him one on the boat when he was like swinging around and like doing all this stuff. I'm like, that's a setting of like a big ballad, you know, like,
and this is why I am a little confused as to why you thought that the runtime was padded. Cause I think the thing that they did the most, and I would say that the things that they added the runtime with, other than her song that I didn't like, most of it felt like what they were doing was they were adding characterization. Like they added a ton.
They did. They added a ton.
He made him a real person, which was
like, it's not like I'm universally bad. Like they should have stuck to every word of the animated movie, because the animated movie, while it is a classic and it is fantastic, you know, it's certainly not. They brush over a lot of the intricacies really that they were filling in. It's a what?
Like, it's fluffy. Like I watched it this morning and I was like, there's no depth to this movie at all. Like it's literally about a teenager that's like, I want to do something else. And then she sees a boy and she's like, I love him so much, Daddy.
Yeah, Daddy won't let me.
And he won't let me. And then Eric is like, I saw a pretty girl and I love her so much. And it's just that's all it is.
Yeah.
Like,
and then you have 3 days to fall in love, which part of me, and here's the other part, is it may just be my old jaded mentality, honestly, dragging my opinion of this movie down a little bit, because part of me is like, you have to immediately give up the skepticism of like scoffing at fall in love in 3 days. Come on.
But I think this movie addressed that so much better, because the older one, it was like true love. They kept talking about true love. And
true love.
I am so old for that. I feel like things like this is what messed up my life for much of my young adult life. Like this idea that he even says like, when I see her, I'll know instantly. I'm like, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. No.
This is horrible to be teaching kids. But also like in this movie, they got rid of that. They were like, we're not going to do that. They actually made them have things in common and they spent time doing them. Like the added scene, which was the best scene in the movie, in my opinion, other than possibly Kiss the Girl, which was done really well, I thought. But the best scene for me was the scene in his like treasure room, which was so perfect.
It was great. That was
shocked when I saw the old one that wasn't in it, because it was almost like, how could you not have seen that this was such a perfect juxtaposition of the two?
I will say that's the best addition to the new movie, because not only that, because it juxtaposes her collection room with his collection room and their love for like the world in general, which also
crap. Both of them are like trinket collectors.
That's right. They both like stuff. You know, they're like me and my amiibo collection. You know, it's like I got them all, man. Look at them. They're on a shelf.
And me and my Pokemon cards.
Don't touch it. Oh, you broke it. Oh, but there was something dope inside it. Okay. You know,
which I loved. She that moment too, where she's just like, thunk, and she breaks the rock.
That's right.
It's great because it shows that she has things that he wants.
Yeah. She understands.
Pretty.
Yeah, where he thought it was just a rock, she saw what was inside it. It's a metaphor, right? Like
it's such a good metaphor.
It, and there was a beauty inside it, even though the outside was like this rough exterior that you might not understand the beauty within, because just like her, she can't speak and he doesn't know anything about her and her life and where she's from. Like beautiful stuff, like
much better than the original, like in terms of story. This story gave them both so much more depth. Eric had a goal beyond like, I'm going to get married to a pretty girl that I meet someday. Like he wanted to fix his country thing.
That's right. He's like
wants to explore and figure out who he is. And she wants to explore and figure out who she is. And she wants to like experience the world. And that it's like, this one felt like they fell in love because they had things in common.
Yeah.
Which is really how it most likely works in real life. It's like, oh, you like Amiibo? I like Amiibo. Cool.
Yeah.
Like you're really hot and it does work like that for some people, but those are.
It does.
the divorce rate in our country is pretty high. So
it's pretty high. But aspects of it, I mean, I don't know, man. And again, that ties into the end. Whereas in the end of the movie, the animated movie, they were like, here's our big wedding. Like, awesome, we're all connected. But in this one, it's like, no, there's not a big wedding, but we're going off to explore the world because we set that up that we both have a love for exploration and the
uncharted waters.
Uncharted waters and stuff like that. So, and while, of course, a jaded person who grew up on the original is like, you didn't end it with a wedding, that's a mark. Like, I'm just like, yeah, but thematically speaking, it works better because they've only known each other for 3 days. Yeah. So they're going on a trip. I mean, just like
did they actually get married too? I thought that they were just engaged at the end.
Were they just engaged? I
felt like
a wedding. There was a priest
at the end of the new one.
No, the end of the old one.
In the old one, they got married for sure.
They got married. No,
but in the new one, I feel like they were just implying that they were like engaged.
Yeah, they're just going on a trip.
Which is so much healthier and better.
It's healthier, yeah.
Like, hey, let's go see if we're compatible after going on a long trip in a boat.
yeah. I mean, it really is. And it's just like, yeah, man, I don't know. We haven't traveled together. So you don't really know someone until you travel with them.
Well, and I'm sure some people are listening to this, like, it's a kid's movie. But, first of all, I think it's strange how people with kids movies don't take like story and messages more important. That's more important in a kid's movie because kids are impressionable. Yeah. So like changing little lines in the Kiss the Girl song from like, you don't have to say the word, just do it. So just ask her, just do it and ask her. Like that was better. Like I'm sure some people are complaining about that, but it's like, we're in a different time now where you can't just, they won't let you do anything, They won't let you. Oh, shush.
And it is healthier approach to a young mind. And I do understand it and appreciate it. And you can't knock the movie for doing that because like, that's just an evolution of the times. Whereas fairy tales were very simple.
I think they did subtle. Cause when I watched the old one this morning, I noticed some couple lines that were different. Like Ursula in her thing, she talks about, they kind of like, I believe they took out the whole bit where she's basically like, oh, a guy doesn't want a girl who talks anyway. Like you've got body language.
Demeaningly to other women.
They completely take that out. Which I was like, yeah, I'm happy they are. It is very clear in the old one to me that she's manipulating Ariel and she's lying to her. Men don't just want you to be quiet. But in a kid's movie that 5-year-olds are watching, like,
she is the villain. You shouldn't take the villain's word as gospel.
But like, I thought in the new one, she got the point across very well. It was really good.
And plus it was just fantastic watching Melissa McCarthy, like eat the scenery,
so good.
She looked, she was perfect cast. I mean, and she's perfect casting and she just really eats it up and has a great time. And even that girl that plays the hot, like the younger seductress version of Ursula, for the couple of minutes she was on screen, like really made an impression. I was like, who is this girl? Like, I know, she's going to have a career too.
Perfectly like the old one in a way that I was like, that's exactly what she would look like. She was in it less though than in the old one.
She's only in it for a minute, but that actress, again, I'm spacing on the name, but like she made an impression as well. And I was like, damn, dude, it's like a lot of these people, it's parts of it where I'm just like, man, this movie's going to be big. This movie's going to do well. Like
that's what I'm saying. I think the acting was one of the strongest parts of the movie. The casting nailed it. I did hear that Lizzo auditioned for Ursula and didn't get it. And I was like, ooh, that is a tough call.
That's tough.
I would have liked to see Lizzo play Ursula. But they were like, we're already pissing off the racists. We can't.
Oh my God. Right. And of course, I don't know if it helped or hurt, man, because then you get the racist, like something where they're just like, well, look at Melissa McCarthy. Well, no, but they're getting on her too, because like, they're like, oh, well, she looks like she's in drag. And I'm like, did you even see the animated movie?
Yeah. Like what
she was more, she was more makeuped up.
I did. Overall though, Eric, I thought it was just better in terms of like, he had real depth. I liked the economic stuff. I didn't think it was too forced. Like you said, I liked the queen. I liked that it added a balance of both of them struggling with what kids struggle with, which is I want to be my own person. And parents are like, I don't want you to. And it just really evened out Triton, which I thought was really nice. And in my head, I was like, I want them to be together. And
I thought Triton, actually, Javier Bardem, for the screen time he got, which he was in the movie a lot more than I thought he would.
Yeah.
He did really well too, you know?
Yeah, like I said, the acting nailed it. I will say he was my least favorite part, and I don't know why.
Oh, you know,
I think it was the visual effects. Right when he came on screen, I was like, I don't know why.
You know, and it's easy to nitpick a movie this. And not only that, like I feel like even the CG in all of its perfection and imperfection that sort of like plays from moment to moment, like it's undeniably really good stuff. Like when you look at it as a whole, you know, it's not Avatar, but it's
we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, I mean it's
well, and I gotta say, like, I'm not at all trying to nitpick. It was something that I couldn't put my finger on it, and I don't know why, but overall, I just kept feeling how Triton felt off. And it wasn't because of the original at all. I didn't care. I hadn't seen it in a while. I for some reason, every time he came on, something felt wrong. And I don't know if it was visual effects. I don't know if it's just Javier Bardem felt like weird casting to me. I'm not sure. He nailed it in the final moment for me when he's like, I'm going to miss her or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it also right from the beginning my least favorite moment of the whole movie is his introduction. And I think
with the krill cape.
No, not even anything. Just that whole scene with all of they got rid of the whole musical thing in that part, which was fine because I didn't remember.
I missed it.
After I saw it, I was like, it was nice to give Sebastian like a thing. I think they filled it in okay, but it was nice that it was a thing. I could see why it would have been really expensive.
I mean, dude, oh my God, dude. And you can even see where they dialed way back on this spectacle that was the big number. Oh my God. What was it called?
Under the Sea?
Under the Sea, yeah.
I was impressed. I thought they did a pretty good job.
And I thought it was really interesting, too, the way they added international flavor to the different sea life creatures, where it's like one were tango dancing sea stars and then these like little Chinese with the triangle hat, like mushrooms, like dancing around. And I was just like, oh, those were so cute. International flavor to this whole musical piece, which I'm just like, that's creative. That's interesting. That's additional thought.
That's also what I would consider like, people complain about woke Disney and stuff. It's like, that's what I feel like Disney should be doing to do representation stuff correctly. It's stuff like adding different representations in the sisters and not bringing a bunch of attention to it and just being like, that's how it is, deal with it. Like, I like that. I thought that was great.
Yeah. And I was like, the sisters were all really good.
Gets around. But then they all had the same mom. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's like, I guess things work differently in Mermaid Land.
But then they made it so that Eric, because I kind of thought that that's what it was going to be with Eric, because I was like, oh, his mom's black. Cool. And then it was like, no, he's adopted. Oh. But I like that. It gave him like depth. It was
that's them laying seeds for Little Mermaid 2. I'm
fine with it. I was like, cool. He was
I would like an adventure where like Ariel's sisters like get in on the adventure and they help her with her adventure. And then he's discovering his parentage and like stuff like that. And you get into this new mermaid adventure where it's like, well, to help you, Eric, I'm going to call on what I know about the sea world. And then we're going to workshop this together. I don't know, man. It's of course, because they're already talking about making sequels to like Aladdin and the Lion King live action versions.
Never talk about Aladdin again. That's one of the worst things
I don't know, dude. I would rather watch Aladdin than Mulan again. Like Mulan was like
Mulan, but we watched Aladdin together, and it was just one of the worst experiences of my life.
Yeah, and again, a movie that like so much effort and talent and creative people involved, and sometimes it just doesn't gel right for reasons no one will ever understand. But it's easy from the outside to look outside and point a finger and being like, you did it wrong. And it's like,
I think that one, we could do an episode on that, but I think that one is stuff that is this one, the things that are wrong with it, they feel like they're things that are pretty honest and like you didn't really know until it came together, and it's hard to plan. Like, and it had things where I'm like, whose idea was it to have everyone have accents except the two main characters? It doesn't make any sense. Just bad planning.
Or to remove all of the personality from the designs of the CG characters and make them straight real, And I was just like, because I feel like Sebastian got the worst end of that stick, even though
in the new one,
oh my God, like I was like, oh no, my boy Sebastian, what happened to you?
Man, I actually so I wanted to talk to you about this. Like, I thought Sebastian, because like when they showed Flounder, I was like, ooh, that character sucks now. That is a bad.
Yeah,
like,
that's not.
You could tell they edited him out because he just wasn't. He wasn't good. He got like no screen time because he just wasn't selling it. It was. They needed him to add some cuteness or something, and he had no cute. He was just a fish.
I feel like Awkwafina was sucking the air out of the room of the three, even though Sebastian probably got more screen time, like, and then they do weird stuff like Awkwafina just dives into the water and starts having a conversation underwater.
But Awkwafina, okay, so we talked about this because you were complaining about it in the trailer. They changed it. Awkwafina's character, Scuttle, is no longer a seagull. She is a diving bird. So
she's a diving bird, yeah.
So she actually can go under the water for a couple minutes. So
yeah.
At least they
at the end of her thing, so they play it off. She's like, I gotta go up for air.
Yeah. And I'm like, so at least they addressed that because you were really annoyed about it in the trailer.
I was annoyed. I was just like,
that I'm gonna lose my mind.
It's one thing to have like changes. It's another thing to have like, it's like, why did you change that?
Right.
Like,
and I thought that was actually a good choice. It's like, okay, Scuttle gets to go underwater. It makes sense, especially when they make such a big deal about Ariel not being allowed to go into the surface. And it's like, okay, so she meets Scuttle on the surface, but Scuttle can come down occasionally when she's not supposed to. Yeah.
It was like Ariel's literally so scared of her dad that she won't break the surface of the water.
Well, and so, I thought Scuttle was great. I actually thought Sebastian was great, especially in comparison to Flounder. I thought Flounder was so creepy, not likable. Like,
and they were winning me over. Of course, like I said, like the movie does a lot to win you over just through being a good movie. Like it hits the marks. It tells the story. It isn't bad in like a Michael Bay Transformers kind of way, where you're just like, what is even happening? Where did it all go wrong? And the plot hasn't moved forward in 20 minutes. It's like
they did a good job.
It is a good job. It is one of the better live action Disney adaptations, I feel. I
haven't seen them all. I didn't see the Lion King.
The Lion King was decent, whereas Aladdin and then Mulan and Cinderella though was good.
We talked about that.
Yeah, Jungle Book was and then Beauty and the Beast had its moments. It's like,
and I heard Cinderella was good.
Cinderella's solid. Like,
it's Kenneth Branagh that directed that.
He did. Yeah, well,
that makes sense.
Because he got into the Disney machine through the Thor movies.
Okay.
And so he directed the first Thor, and then he was in the machine, and But I like him as an actor too.
This is my favorite one I've seen of the Disney reboot live actions.
Yeah.
Other than, I liked Beauty and the Beast, but I actually liked this one more. I felt like the thing that this did that I really appreciated, for all of its faults that it might have, to me, if you're going to remake something, you have to have it, at least you have to add something to it that makes it worth making. And
justify
I think they did that
the remake.
Yeah, I think that they added a ton to the story that makes me even like the original better because I can pretend like all of that stuff they added is in those characters.
Retroactively, the world gets bigger,
Yeah, that alone, I think, justified the movie. I think that they did a lot of cool stuff with visual effects that justified it. It was different enough from the original. It wasn't just it wasn't, because it's the ocean and they imagined things differently. Like it wasn't a shot for shot remake, which would have been really hard. Maybe that's because of visual effects, but it wasn't like just they took it and made it live action. They reimagined some stuff. The Under the Sea one, especially, like you said, they added things. They did stuff differently. They added a couple of songs, which I felt like they needed to, whether they were good or not. At least they added to the soundtrack. They dropped a song, one or two.
They dropped Le Poisson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it's funny because even Sebastian mentions it at one point. He was like, I almost became seafood getting up here. And I was like, where was that?
I wonder if they cut it out. Like if it was filmed.
I wondered in the moment, like, did you film that whole scene and then realize it was like creepy and messed up and would probably traumatize kids?
When I saw the old one, I was like, oh, I remember this guy now. First of all, I remember being afraid of the chef when I was a kid. Second of all, seeing a real knife trying to a crab or whatever would have been terrifying. So I'm glad they took it out.
Yeah, it's one of those moments when you're just like, I get it. Yeah. Like you put on your critical thinking hat for 1 minute, you can see why they cut that out.
Yeah.
And the fact that he references it makes me feel like they might have even attempted it.
Or at least it was a cute nod, in which case, very good.
I'll take it too. I'll take it too, because at least you're acknowledging, right? Like you're acknowledging that moment may have happened. And then in a perfect world, you can watch both movies and sort of fill in the gaps, you know?
It seems like somebody who, if you're making a remake of a movie, even if you didn't film it, to put that in there shows me that they at least care about the audience a bit.
That's
they
right.
Care about the original. Like, I think overall, like, you can complain about this movie all you want. I do think it did a good job. Like, I think the things that it did poorly are things that you can't really fault it for. Yeah. It wasn't obvious going in. They did a lot of stuff right.
Yeah, it's honestly a fun, solid movie. And even if you're a jaded, you know, jerk like me, like I can be sometimes about big visual effects, blockbuster filmmaking and stuff like this, you know, if you go in, the problems that you're gonna have, if you have problems with, you know, changing the casting and the characters and like expanding the world and adding songs, blah, blah, and not adhering frame to frame to the source material of what the animated movie was, then the real problem is with you, because this is a pretty solid film. Like,
if you go in wanting to hate it, you'll hate it.
Exactly. But honestly, I went in skeptical and it won me over. Like,
I went in pretty open. I think you and I are good two sides of a coin that way. Like, you're a little more jaded with movies. I tend to really... Yeah, to a fault, I tend to like most movies. So
if I get to not liking a movie, I'll go in on not liking it. I'll be like, no, every decision they made was wrong.
As we learned with Doctor Strange 2, I will lose my mind. But I've learned you tend to get, I think, more upset about like those the big picture stuff, and I get really upset about the story stuff. If the story is bad, I lose my mind. If the story is good, it wins me over. I can let go of the other stuff. And this one, the story, I think they made it better. I think they made the characters. They gave the two, like when I said earlier, the first hour is the weakest part for me, other than Under the Sea, which I think shines pretty well. Ursula is pretty good. I mean, she's great, but like those scenes but the rest of it just felt kind of forgettable and dark and murky.
Yeah. And of course it ends that way too a little bit. You know, I feel like the finale, while epic, I mean, they went epic in the finale. Good.
The visual effects of the sea and the big whirlpool.
Oh my God. Like I was in the boats rising up and like all this stuff. Oh, you know, but again, like part of me, it's like easy to be critical for like being like, well, like they should have done this and they should have done that. And I wish they would have done this. And then to dock the movie for not doing the things that you imagine they would do. Then you're getting into like Star Wars critique territory where it's like, well, a Jedi would never. And, you know, and it's like, well, it's this, you know, would I have liked it if Ariel and Eric had been steering the boat together to pierce, you know, her, because Eric was like useless in the finale. he was just stuck on a rock.
I do think it made more sense for Ariel to do it than Eric, but I agree that would have been nice for them to do together.
Yeah, because they're coming together, right?
Yeah,
like
it's metaphors.
Yeah, metaphors, you know.
But how did you feel about the change? I thought, because in the original, Eric did it alone.
Eric does it.
Yeah. And in the new one, Ariel does it.
Ariel does it alone. And while I you know, in my heart of hearts, I would have wished they would have done it together to show them
assuming that's
together.
Not an option.
Assuming that's not an option, I'm perfectly fine with the way it was done, because it was directed in a very epic way and interesting. And you know, and while I feel like the CG may have been a little iffy on Ursula's face, so they obscured it a lot. You know, they like did not want to show. That. They did not show her face. And not only that, they added like gills and stuff to her neck and did all this stuff. But everything around it was like this really, you know, crazy spectacle of a finale that I thought played really well and was very satisfying and just fun to watch. And when you're in the theater, I saw it in 3D and I was like, man, woof, you know, like this.
I saw it. Okay, this is a side, but I saw it in D-Box. Have you ever done that?
Oh yeah, the seats, right? Like the seats move.
It's like a little ride, and it was such a bad choice because I get motion sick and it's underwater. So the entire time it was like floating the seat. And I was like, stop it. So I had to turn it down. But back on from a writing standpoint, in the original, it was great full circle, right? Because you see him doing his steering at the beginning and then you see him at the end, he does it and the audience can figure it out. And they're like, he's going to use the boat and and then it happens.
That's
and
right.
Good writing.
Yeah.
But in the new one, I thought it was actually objectively better because it's something she learned from him. Mm-hmm. She learned from watching him. The only way that she was able to kill the big bad guy that Triton wasn't able to do, by the way, was by disobeying him and coming to the surface and learning from the humans. And that whole scene of her watching him use the steering wheel.
That's right.
it was much more satisfying at the end for me. People can complain all they want about like, well, they had to give it to the girl or something. It's like, well, yeah, why would you?
I mean, it's ultimately, again, like you're in to criticize one way or the other. Like you're in a very nitpicky space of like, does this make the movie? Does this 10 seconds make the movie bad? And the answer is no.
I think it makes it better. Like I said, I think it's better writing.
And from
have the hero do it.
You want the hero to defeat the villain. It's not fun when not the hero. When Ariel is the one that the villain was actively harming. It doesn't get
the Prince Eric. It's called the Little Mermaid.
It's called the Little Mermaid because she has a little jade mermaid,
which was actually really cute.
I actually was like, in the beginning when I saw it, I was like,
I was like, is it in the
early
original?
In the film? Jaded me was like, oh, come on.
Mermaid.
I kind of thought that they were going to work it in by having Trident call her his Little Mermaid. You know, you'll always be my Little Mermaid. Like in the end of the movie, I had it locked and loaded. I was like, if you would have asked me, I'd have put money on it.
That would have been more cheesy. I liked having the little, when he was like, oh, she's my Little Mermaid. And I was like, that's cute. I think it's cute.
Yeah. And
it's stuff for Disney to make and sell at Disneyland. Yeah. That's definitely why they did it.
It's like, you got to have one now.
I will be shocked if they don't make that into a
someone's going to make it. What are you talking about? No decision like that is made in a $200+ million movie without them being like, money. It's when green it came because of like, money.
Hey. But it added to the story, so it was fine.
It is.
The last thing, I mean, at least that I really want to talk about is the kiss the girl scene, because I just really liked it. Like, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought it was good. It's hard because so much of the old movie like isn't fresh in my mind. So a lot of like the bigger stuff that happens in the old movie where it's like, instead of like a couple of little streams of water sort of like shooting over their boat in the animated movie, it was like this incredible rows of water fountains, like engulfing them. And I'm like, I want to see that in CG. You can do more now. Like there's like one and then two and but again, nitpick, right? Like,
I think it brings up an interesting point, because that's kind of what I said earlier, where I feel like the tone, it was pretty consistent. It did a good job, but there are moments where it doesn't quite know how extreme it wants to go. Like it does decisions like Flounder looks like a real fish.
Yeah.
But then also is like, but we still want like we
still want fish water fountains
and like on command, and we still want some like under the sea big musical number, and
heart-shaped crickets.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like I liked that they made that scene. I liked overall that the movie felt more grounded, because I think that that's also like, again, it justifies the remake. If you're going to make a live action movie, you have to acknowledge that live action is always going to feel more grounded. In animated, it should feel more fantastical. But there were times where it wasn't sure if that's what it was trying to do. So you're like, okay.
I mean, it's not like in The Lion King where you're going to have an elephant standing on a giraffe, standing on an elephant with a ball on its head with the monkeys on top. And it's like, try to make that with live action. It'll look weird and
Did they
off-putting.
try to do that?
I can't honestly remember because it's been a few years.
Well, and that's part of why I didn't see The Lion King, because I was like, I don't
suspect they did. I don't recall it.
I can't really see in my head how you would justify making this. They'd have to go real grounded with it for it to be justified in my head. But anyway, I really liked the Kiss the Girl scene because it felt so real.
Yeah,
it was really impressed.
It was really good. And like, again, like there were moments and especially that scene where it's a lot of like practical photography mixed with some CG and a lot of, CG elements added in. And of course, like all of it's post-corrected, but like that was a place where I felt like a lot of it really gelled, like real actors interacting with each other, CG happening around them. And it grounds the whole thing down in a way that's like that didn't have the problems they were running into underwater.
That's what they needed underwater, was more of that interaction. That's what the Triton scene introduction bugged me the most with the editing. Like we didn't get to feel his grandness come in because we didn't get to see any like expression on any of the characters' faces. Yeah.
And it's the difference between an actor that's got a set to work with and play off of and an actor that doesn't. And it shows
other actors
and other actors as well. Yeah. It's like, but that scene I did feel played really well and looked really good. And while, again, like while the movie was slowly winning me over, like that scene was another drop in the bucket where I'm just like, you think about it in hindsight. In the moment, you're just like, not as good as the original. But then later on, you're just like, no, it was good. Like there's nothing wrong.
So into it. I was like, this is the best. Because that whole middle part, right from when she's like throws the rock on the ground. So their like map thing, because I was like, first of all, that is that scene where he's like showing her stuff and she's just so excited. And he's just like, oh, is this what it feels like to have somebody be listening to me and interested in what I'm doing? I was like, that is what like love, quote unquote, like feels like. That's what falling in love looks like.
And the modern day equivalent is you playing video games on the couch and your girlfriend sitting next to you and being like into watching you play.
Or vice versa, Dan.
Or vice versa, either way. But it's just like, well, you're interested in this stuff. I thought it was just me,
listening to not only being interested, but like listening and being like, he's like
asking questions, kind of. Yeah. I mean, she wasn't, but she kind of was. He was like, you want to see more? And she grabs another map and like puts it down and it's just like, and he's just like, more,
He's like, this is great. And also, what's his name? Digsby or something? Grimsby was so much better in this, like so likable how he's like watching them and he's like, you should just marry her. She's real cute and she likes you.
He's like, I don't know what you're looking for, bro. Like better than this.
Yeah. And it was adorable. And I loved the subtle love story between Grimsby and the Queen. I thought that was very cute. Like they're totally ending up together. But Kiss the Girl, I really liked. I wanted to bring it up because I think it had what is arguably the best moment in the movie if you don't count the scene with the maps and the rock. Like that's my favorite scene, but one of the best moments in the movie, especially I was shocked when I realized this was added, was her telling him her name. Like
Ariel with the star. Yeah. So
such good writing, Dan.
Yeah, that was a good scene too. Her trying to figure out a way to communicate with him, sends a voice. I thought was really interesting stuff. And let Halle Bailey. I am dyslexic. I'm very sorry. Like Halle Bailey sort of flex, like she's getting these moments. She's getting to act. She's getting to do a good job. And honestly, by the time I got to the end of the movie, I wanted more of her. There was a scene where he's sitting on the steps and she hasn't come back yet. And she walks up on him. And I was like, please give me a conversation. Like right here. She tells him her name. She talks about who she is and where she's from and how she's different. But then, they sort of like have this first conversation that I want to see, for real. It didn't have to be a 5-minute long scene. It just had to be like a minute or so. But again, I was just like, but I will say when a movie leaves you wanting more, that means the movie did something right. So I was like,
were better.
Yeah. I was like
more out of the first hour of the underwater and given more ending.
Get out of that underwater. I didn't need a shark attack in the opening.
Yeah. It's funny how forgettable that scene was. Like
in the grand scheme,
memorable part of the cartoon.
Yeah.
And it was done well in the new one. I was like, it's shot well. It's good visual effects. It's scary. And like,
if there's any scene that could have gone, I'd have been happy without that.
I kind of forgot it happened.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
I will say it is a testament to the film to be like, just give me a couple more words. Is there a director's cut? Are there more scenes? I'm interested. Yeah. I mean, hopefully one day they make a sequel and I get those moments, these fish out of waters, two world collide, sort of like interesting interspecies conversation.
Eric go to the ocean. You're like, whoa.
Yeah. Can Eric become a merman in the next movie?
Like why can't they just go back and forth? That would be great.
Yeah. He meets like a real he meets Merlin or something from a wizard that's out in the real world, and then he like curses him to be a merman because he's like, oh, you like mermaids so much, huh?
She's stuck as a human.
Yeah, she's stuck as a human and can't go underwater.
Part of my world.
Yeah, so now he's the fish out of water, literally, but up down
in the water.
In fish in the water. I don't know.
Yeah.
Writes itself, I think.
I think so. Whoever, though, the writer was that decided, like, oh my gosh, Ariel has the root word Aries, which is a star, which sailors use. Eric is a sailor. Oh my gosh. Like, that was really smart. And it was just so much better than in the old one. Sebastian's like, Ariel, her name is Ariel. And he's like, Ariel? And you're like,
yeah, oh, Ariel? Oh, got it.
It's like, first of all, just it again, metaphorically from a writing standpoint, giving her power, even when she doesn't have her voice, and her being the one who still conveys. Ursula can take her voice all she wants, but she's still able to make him fall in love with her because they genuinely are in love. And I mean, as much as you can be for 2 days, but like they genuinely like each other. And like, she still is like, oh, I can tell him my name. And like, and I just thought that was really good writing to be like, no, she should be the one who tells her name, even if she can't. And like, it was so cute to see her like flub his little lips.
Yeah.
Like it was really cute. Maybe a little unbelievable, but no less believable than Crab or whatever in his ear. Like, idiot, her name is Idiot. He's like,
the Crab told me your name.
Yeah. Super weird.
It's like, man, the things you're willing to go with for an animated movie, I will say.
Yeah. I liked when you were talking about Sebastian, Flounder was so bad, I think, for me, that like at least Sebastian had eyes that like conveyed emotion.
He did, yeah, and a mouth that like moved a little bit better, especially in the close-ups. I thought, when you're looking at Sebastian from far away, you're just like, it's just a crab. Like, I don't like. It's like they could have put some design into him. I don't know, but
I mean, honestly, I think it was a choice.
It's definitely a choice.
It was
one they got to live with.
Yeah,
but I'm just like, where? I'm sorry. I was just like, where was the Disney toy making marketing machine when they approved these designs? Like, they're not.
I was like, really shocked by Flounder. I was like, you didn't want to make him cute at all. Like some, like,
I was like, you're not selling any of these Flounder toys. I don't know what you thought. Like,
I thought that they would at least do. Maybe they're just trying to sell fish. Like they just want to have an aquarium full of fish.
Maybe I don't know.
The movie seems pretty against that. But I thought for sure they were going to do the thing where like, they're cute when she's talking to them, but then it cuts to somebody else just looking at like a crab and it's just a crab. Like they could have easily done that.
Yeah, I kind of thought they were going to play with a little bit more humor where like the cutaway, where like she can understand that, but nobody else can. So when when somebody watches her interacting with them. You're adorable. I thought they were going to lean into that a little bit more, but they certainly didn't. And I don't know. It's neither here nor there whether it would have served the movie better because it's not in the movie that is. And I don't know. Maybe in the sequel they'll do some stuff like that. Maybe they won't. But honestly, it's not a bad movie, and you won't regret showing it to your kids. And if you have any kids under the age of 12, they're probably going to adore it. So it's a win.
And with the things like, Sebastian isn't as good looking or whatever, the voice acting is so good.
That guy killed it.
He made me laugh so hard. They added some lines that were funny. The lines that were old, he nailed and brought some of his own stuff. But I just, I'm a crustacean who has options.
Yeah, I'm a crustacean with options. Yeah. He's like complaining about his job.
Yeah. And the old one did that too, but they changed some of the wording and it was just, gosh, he made me laugh. I was really shocked at how much Sebastian stole the show for me. Like he made me laugh. Scuttle did too, but despite him being kind of ugly, that voice acting really just, he was so, all his they went hard on his like murmuring under his breath, being a sarcastic, angry little crab. And it was really good.
He was great. He was super great. And again, it's just another good call. And while you can bicker about the design all you want, but the character is strong. It's well written, well acted, and that's ultimately what matters and ultimately what lifts the movie up as a whole. While and again, I'll come back and I'll just be like, while it isn't the perfect home run that I would have wanted, and there's certainly things you can not like and nitpick and all that stuff, but ultimately it's an interesting movie. It's worth watching. If you've never seen the animated version, you don't need to really.
You'll get as much out of this.
Yeah, and if you saw this one and not that one, and you like this one, watch that one. You'll just get more to the story you already love, more of the characters you already love. So it's
slightly more vapid characters.
Yeah, slightly fluffier. I mean, it's an 80-minute movie. You can only tell so much story in 80 minutes.
In the 90s, or sorry, 80s.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of depth to their cartoons yet.
No, not really. It was, you're talking about a time from when like she's asleep and I kissed her. She woke up when we were married.
Yeah.
That's how relationships work.
True enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a lot of good stuff with this. I was really impressed. Obviously, yeah, watching the old one, there were certain things that I'm like, this is just better. A lot of the ocean design is just better. But at the same time, it's like, from a practical standpoint of people who've worked on movies, I fully see how they got where they got. I think they did tons right that they could have easily done wrong. The stuff they did wrong, I can totally see that happening. And just you're millions in and you're like, this is what Flounder looks like.
That's right. We're going with it. We gotta pick one.
This is what the ocean looks like. We'll try
this movie was in production way before AI came along, so we can't make 1,000 iterations on the design in 10 minutes.
I'm assuming that it must have started during COVID, right?
I remember hearing rumblings of this movie all the way back when Chloe Moretz.
That was a different movie, though.
Was it a different movie?
Yeah, that was Universal. Universal had somehow, I think because it's technically
it's public domain.
Yeah, public domain. It's gotta be. Chloe Moretz or whatever. She was attached to the Universal movie. And it was going to be really dark.
Yeah, I thought she was going to be in either way. I mean, I can see why.
Yeah, and that got canceled.
Disney. That's probably why Disney made this one, is because they saw like, oh, you're thinking about it. No, we gotta do it then.
And it's sad because Universal just canceled it completely, and it's probably
of course.
Disney was like,
and nobody wants a dark Little Mermaid movie. She turned into seafoam in the end, and everybody be miserable.
Yeah, overall, I would watch it again. I really liked. I was listening to the Scuttlebutt song this morning. I liked it.
It's gonna be on one of those movies that's on repeat in the background in family households for years to come, and that means Disney did a great job. Because
if you're somebody who wasn't an original fan of the old one, like me, you don't really care for cartoons. If you've got kids, especially, like if I had kids, I would be like, let's watch this one over and over again, because you get enough of the kids stuff, but I get some more, like there's stuff in there for me to analyze on a second or third watching. Like the acting, like I said, is super solid, good character stuff, good, all that. And I don't have to watch a cartoon.
Totally.
And all of our audience hate me because they all love it.
Man. It's like the haters online can hate all they want, but in due time, the movie will win over its audience.
Yeah.
The kids were cheering. Everyone in the end clapped in my theater screening. I only
saw it with like 4 other people. They were teenage girls. They took forever to get popcorn. I was stuck behind them. I was annoyed. No, it was like 10 a.m. on Friday. So that's why I am an old lady who goes to the movie at the first showing of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I don't,
but they liked it. So, I think that it's going to do well. I think it's like a solid 6.5, 7 out of 10 for me. I don't know. I'm not good at ratings. I'd go with a
6.5, 7. Look, I'm a little bit past ratings at this point. I like a little bit more critical analysis, but if you analyzing. If you want to give it a rating, 7, it's
average. It's a good movie.
It's a good time. You're not going to go to this. You're not going to go to a theater and pay to see this movie and feel like you wasted your money. It's not a Transformers film.
Unless you want to. If you really want to, wanting to hate
in which case you saw the trailer. Why are you here? If
you went into it wanting to hate it, then you'll hate it. But if you will go in with an open mind, you'll get some stuff out of it. You'll enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Some things might rub you the wrong way, but there's plenty of great stuff to be enjoying about it.
Yeah, it's a good old fun time, man. No complaints. Well, I mean, like some complaints, but like it's not gonna ruin my day. Like this Little Mermaid movie existing is not a bad thing in the world. Some people are really gonna love it.
Yeah, so, I thought it was good. I thought they added to it. It was great. So that's a thing. We talked about Mermaid.
Maybe next time we should get a movie where one of us really hates it, or do a horror movie or something, but we'll figure out what the next movie review is. What is it? Spider-Verse? Are we doing Spider-Verse?
I think we should do Spider-Verse. It comes out next weekend, right?
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. This seemed done well. That was good grammar. This seems like it went well. I love chatting with you. You're my favorite.
Yeah. We'll see what the audience thinks of like our little new thing, and figure the rest out.
Yeah. Audience, let us know what you thought, but be nice.
Yeah. And podcast name ideas, plenty.
Yeah, we need a podcast name.
ChatGPT is only giving us trash.
Yeah, it's stuff that's already used, so we can't use that. And yeah, join us next time for Into the Spider-Verse, where we'll talk more about it. I think, well, what is it called?
I think it's Across the Spider-Verse, and then there's another one already in production called Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Oh, Spider-Man's with its trios. Very cute.
Yeah, pretty much.
We both loved Into the Spider-Verse, so I'm excited to see Across the Spider-Verse.
Who didn't love Into the? Yeah,
movie?
it's like if you didn't like Into the Spider-Verse, then you're just dead inside. I don't know
about movies.
Yeah, like why are you sharing your opinions to the wider world if you didn't like that film?
It's like saying you don't like Terminator. Like,
yeah, I mean, there will be people.
Yeah,
There's always. Wrong, so. Everyone's entitled to their own wrong opinion. That's fine.
It's totally fine. Yep. Give us some podcast names. Thank you for listening / watching. Oh, I guess we should say this podcast is available on platforms. For sure, right now it'll be on YouTube, but hopefully in the future we'll be also on all the other places. So